Good afternoon and welcome to BD TV. This month we're delighted to be joined by Adele Ross. Adele's a really experienced business strategy and growth professional, currently in the tech sector. She works for Arrow, supporting teams in 18 countries and regions across EMEA. Keep up to speed, especially with developments in cloud technology. She's former alumni of the BD consultancy and also has been a client when she was working at Kin & Carta. Now in the tech sector, part of the attraction of having Adele as a guest today was to have someone outside of that core finance and law echo chamber that we so often work in, and to bring a fresh perspective about what's important, where investment's going, and how people are operating at speed in the technology sector. Welcome, Adele.
Thanks for having me, Pete. Hi.
Hi. Pleasure. Um, First of all, to kick off, can you please tell us a little bit more about what you're doing in your current role?
Yeah, sure. So I work for Arrow, who are a global technology business. The division that I work within is around technology distribution. So our customers are resellers of technology who engage with the end customers. The role I have sits within the EMEA function of the Cloud Centre of Excellence. So as you mentioned, I am responsible for coaching and developing those 18 countries and regions, their teams, to achieve greater success with all things cloud.
Okay. Cloud is one of those words I struggle to say. So if we can move away from that quickly and just talk about the sector more broadly. What now clearly when we worked together 10 plus years ago, you were mainly focused on legal and finance clients. What do you think the biggest difference is as you've moved from that world into more of a technology-led world?
Well, I think the challenges that businesses are experiencing are the same across the board. I think that the breadth is wider for technology because we do the tech, but we interact with businesses in all sectors. Something which is really important that we experience firsthand, and all of the wider sectors also have this challenge, is relating to skills, technology skills.
Yep.
How to find, how to retain, how to retrain. So that's something which we are leading, and we're seeing our customers and their customers experiencing those challenges and looking for advice and direction.
Yes, yeah. Everything I read about challenges for finance and law firms going into next year, and what our clients are telling us, is about uh, two filters, I suppose, on technology: how they're using tech to help their clients and deliver their service more efficiently, but also that massive skills gap in terms of their own talent, and how they're closing that. Where do you think the need is most pressing? Is it right across the tech sphere, or is it in terms of the skills gap, especially?
Probably two areas would be security and cloud.
Yes. Okay. And the interrelationship, I imagine, between.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. And what about so if as many of our viewers will be, they're running a marketing or BD department for a law, finance, or consulting firm. Where should they start in terms of trying to identify and close that skills gap? Who should they be talking to? Who should they be talking to internally? And it's such a huge amorphous area. What's step one?
Well, I guess it depends on the size of the organization. So if the organization is large enough to have a technology team, then it's to assess the skills that already exist and create a roadmap for development and reskilling and ensuring that there's longevity side by side with the technology roadmap. Many organizations don't have a full technology team, so it's about who you're partnering with for that technology. So that's not the technology vendor. the Microsoft or the IBM as an example. It's the reseller who you are procuring that through, because they will hold those skills. And is that something you can procure from them, or do you engage with a managed service provider to overlay all of those technology skills?
Okay, so and that reseller could be any sort of size of organization, from a sort of 1 or 2 consultants working together right up to BT. Am I right?
Exactly that, yes.
Yeah. So and they will typically help with identifying that needs analysis, or
Yeah, so a reseller should be advising what technology suits your business challenges and how best to procure that, which now seems to be a subscription model, so CapEx, OpEx conversation. And yes, once they know your technology roadmap, they can also support you in your installation and maintenance roadmap for skills alongside that, helping analyze what you have in-house and making recommendations if you don't have capabilities internally.
Okay, thanks. I know that will be helpful to people in that sort of CMO position who are thinking, where do I start? I've engaged with my CTO, but I'm not, I feel slightly exposed in terms of where we go from here, and that's something I hear often. Looking at this from the other side, then I think it's tempting to for us in operating predominantly in the more traditional professional sphere to look at technology as this exciting wonder child. What can the tech sector learn from law and finance?
I think that the priority and importance of governance in law and finance is something that technology is having to keep up with now. So as I mentioned, security is a hot topic, and the move to the cloud increases the importance of security. So governance in all of those operations is increasingly important.
Yeah. Okay. And you talk about professional services within technology as well. So just to be really clear on the language we're using here, what does professional services in the technology sphere mean?
If you boil it right down, it's IT consultancy.
Okay. It's the advisory aspects.
Yeah.
Okay. One of the other big attractions of chatting with you today is to understand how you're working pan-European and what that looks like post-pandemic. My initial thought is it must be a little bit easier to engage across the region now that video is just the default choice for many meetings. Is that true?
Yes and no. We're in an enviable position to be able to engage in the way that we do now every day. But I think it also brings some challenges. They're always on. Is difficult across different time zones and with cultural sensitivities around what your day looks like. So I think, yes, it's fantastic to have this easy interaction, but particularly when you're doing it on a very large scale, it's interesting to understand how people are engaging on that. When you're presenting on a Teams meeting to 100 plus people, they're not all listening.
No, shock.
So it's but if they'd attended a room for that session, they wouldn't be doing their emails.
Yeah.
So I think it's about adapting how we communicate and ensuring that those larger sessions are much more bite-sized. So it's more relevant, it keeps the attention span, and it also doesn't take up much of people's diaries in the same way. Also interesting is the kind of cultural norms. I'm lucky that my team that I work in EMEA all we do business in English. Thank you, everyone who's much more clever than me to speak multiple languages. But I think there's some sensitivities around how people speak English as a second language, because I was just in Spain for the last 2 days with my team, and hearing people speak in Spanish, they're used to interrupting people and they're comfortable with that. Whereas us Brits will sit quietly and wait for them to finish. And I raised this conversation with a Spanish colleague, and he said, yes, it is strange because in a Spanish business environment, rarely would he finish every sentence. Yet we're sitting quietly and letting him talk for a long time. So I think it's just having an awareness of that and making sure that the communication is clear and open about what's expected. And building relationships is not easy from scratch over video.
Agreed. It's something that's come up before, but it's reassuring to hear you say that, even as a company whose core skill is around tech sales and advisory. So you clearly chose to jump on a plane to Spain this week. What did you get from that you wouldn't have got from opening up a Teams call?
Tapas?
No, I don't want to.
No, we had it's important to build a relationship in person, and I know that we will interact 100% more effectively having spent a couple of days together. There were many people actually who were recruited just prior to the pandemic who had never met anyone else in the team face to face.
Wow.
So that it was hugely beneficial. But what we're trying to do to encourage that engagement is a concept that we are trialing: virtual co-working.
Yeah, tell me more.
If we sat in an office next to each other, then I'd know more about the individuals, their tasks, their personal life, and we'd be able to better support and collaborate. That we wouldn't have to dial into a meeting, etc. So we host every other week a block of 3 hours where we virtually work together. We kind of use the Pomodoro technique to introduce the tasks we're going to do for 10 minutes, go around the room, virtual room, and then we minimize or log off for 50 minutes, get through our actions list, come back together. And in those sort of coming back together 10 minutes, we do 3 rounds. We might have a cup of tea, or we might talk about someone who's just had a challenge, but I find it hugely productive. Because I've admitted to the virtual room of 10 people, these are the 3 things I'm going to do. I'm less likely to get distracted if I've said I'm going to do it. And also it allows me a view into other people's working day, their task list, so often we'll say, I'm working on this, and someone will say, oh, let me have 10 minutes, I can help you.
Lovely. So it almost brings back that sort of ad hoc, on the job support and interaction and collaboration. A really nice idea. I think we could benefit from that in BD consultancy as well. So. And any pushback on it?
They did think I'm new to this team, and I introduced it very early, and I said, please stick with me. It might sound strange, but give me 6 sessions, and then we'll review it and see how we adapt. And the first session, not everyone attended, but those who did were really positive and said they felt energized, because many of them are working remotely at home. So there was that bit of connection. Someone described it as the 10-minute slots as virtual coffee breaks. So I definitely think that there wasn't pushback, but there was hesitancy, but people enjoy it. It's a nice, and also it's a 3-hour invite in your calendar, so you can't get other calls in there. So it definitely helps with the to-do list as well.
No, that's a really nice point. And you mentioned earlier about the the challenge of trying to not be always on. And is that, have you got all of your your direct team, are they in the UK, or are they also right across the UK, right across the people that you do this virtual co-working with?
Poland, France, Spain, and the
Okay.
UK.
Okay. I imagine there's a few off in France today.
Yeah.
We can scrap that. That's of course not necessarily the case. I'm sure anyone who's watching the football last night will have returned to their desk. Okay, that's really nice to know, because I know people. I just as I am. I know that others listening are thinking, well, I've got I've got teams across the UK, or I've got teams for some of the firms listening in London, Paris, New York, Singapore. How do we create some of that rapport and some of that collaboration that is so difficult when we're in two dimensions. So yeah, no, really nice idea. Thank you. So do you see, in terms of bringing your resellers together as well, is it more of a return to normal in terms of people getting back into events and conferences and so on, or do you think there's still going to be a degree of hybrid around that, like you described?
I think it is slightly hybrid. I think there's lots of positives that came out of our move to more remote working. So all of the big conferences, there are many more attendees now, because you don't need to fly to Vegas and spend thousands of dollars on accommodation and your tickets. You can dial into all of the sessions and even engage and collaborate in them. So I think that hybrid will continue. And I think we're seeing that it's business by business there, how they are moving back towards it. Some offices have closed, some have moved to hybrid when they were always 5 days a week in the office. So it's a mixture, but definitely the collaboration is stronger when there is some time in the room, physically in the room.
Yeah, agreed. Adele, it's been really interesting and helpful. You've taken it from the very strategic right down to the real nuts and bolts practical, which is something we really appreciate on these calls. So thank you. Just before you leave, we ask all guests this: what's life like outside of work?
I hate these questions. Well, right now it's busy, as you can see my Christmas tree. It's all in the ramp up to Christmas.
Fine tree.
Thank you.
Yeah.
So busy with family and school things.
Yeah.
But for me, more broadly, I have a role as the chair of governors for my youngest son's school. So that keeps me busy, as does I deliver mentoring within the business, but also within a women's business network. So to people who are looking to further and grow in their careers. So that's something I spend a lot of time doing. I really enjoy. And so my next challenge next year will be to qualify formally as an executive coach to continue with that.
Oh, excellent. Feel free to give that a plug. What's the women's network called?
It's called the Step Up Club.
Step Up Club. Cool. Adele, thank you very much. Thanks for sharing your thoughts today. I know it's going to be a popular session. Hope you have a good rest of the day, and thanks to everyone who's been listening. Take care.
Thanks, Pete.
Thanks.